Welcome to Ocean Ideas, where ocean experts and advocates share big ideas for our blue planet. In this episode, Beauty Beasts of the Ocean, we explore whale conservation through Indigenous knowledge, marine science, and climate insight. Let's dive in.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks for joining us on a Sunday. I'm just co-managing being a scientist and having kids. So this is probably good for all the families in the audience who might do the same. My work is very much focused on conservation, but helping us understand how we can learn more to then better protect and create more targeted approaches when it comes to conserving some of the biggest animals on Earth, but also sharing information with people who have known more about whales than we have for many, many years, such as Indigenous rangers here in Sydney, the Gamay Rangers. And Jodi will be able to speak to a lot of the Indigenous connection with whales as well, which is great. But also applying new technologies to learn more about whales and what they do, what they get up to, but also collaborating with the general public as well to find out what do they see.
I deeply regret saying this a few years ago in public, but it's amazing what you can achieve when you commit to really mediocre parenting. My sons would attest to that. Jodi, tell us a bit about what you do and what you love most about what you do.
Yeah, I guess most of my work is bringing people along on the journey and travelling the storylines to learn a lot more about Aboriginal culture. And when we talk about Aboriginal cultural ecological knowledges, what that actually means, learning more about our storylines, our songlines, and how they impact, and understanding why they're so important for not only sea kin but land, sea and sky country. So making sure people understand that there's a three-way connection.
Thank you. You talked a bit about sea kin this morning and that land, sea and sky connection, but it'd be great to unpick that in a moment if we can take up some of your time. Olaf, it feels like just a year that we were sitting here on the stage talking about the Humpback Highway, talking about your work with whales. But again, tell us a bit about what you do and what you love most about what you do.
Yeah, that's true. It's been a year and still traveling with the whales. So actually just arrived last night. And so some of our whales are making it back now from the Southern Ocean. I wasn't in the Southern Ocean, but yeah. So the love is obviously the whales and working with and for the whales to make a difference. Managing an international research program has its up and downs, but the exciting part is that you actually meet a lot of different researchers and you get a lot of different perspectives on some of the issues that the whales are facing at the moment and in the near future, and trying to develop better protection. And of course, I think this works well with our topic today, is expanding our knowledge system and not reinventing the wheel over and over again, working on the same topics.
I know we have three amazing communicators here in different ways, and congratulations on your recent award as well. The title of this is about beauties and beasts. Are there really beauties and beasts of the whale world?
That depends on maybe perspective. So we think of whales as these... Well, the whales are very large, and so we often think of... And I know there was Tooth or Dare in the panel on yesterday, which was pretty cool. And I think that the perceptions of whales is usually a lot... This is very generally speaking, but a lot softer. People see whales as majestic or frolicking, dare I quote. And they are very large creatures, but the reality is their size... Some people might interpret it as beast-like, but are they really like that? It all comes down to the lens and how people see them. I know a lot of people in Sydney as well, a lot of the First Nations people I'm working with, the Gamay Rangers, see buri with the totem for some of them, which is really interesting as well. But for the general public, a humpback whale would be something that they would only imagine to see up close, and then when they have the opportunity, they see these creatures, and they are, and every time, and I'm sure every time we see a humpback whale, there's always that fascination. No matter how many we've seen, they are amazing creatures, and what they do is incredible. It is incredible. Like Olaf was saying, they are en route right now to our waters. Some are already here, which is exciting. And when we see them, especially literally on the Humpback Highway, it never gets old, and there's always that fascination. We don't know much about them. We actually don't. We're learning more, but we really don't know much, and that's what I really like about it. And that's what I find super interesting. So it's more of a beauty for me.
So I've got to ask, can you tell us a bit about sea kin, Jodi? And also whether, I know this is sort of, it's come up a couple of times over the last 2 days, whether we're really commercialising this concept of kin.
Yeah, so seeking for us is, similar to what Vanessa said. They're our totemic for some of us, but we are related through our dreaming stories. We are whales. For those who were here earlier, you heard me talk about our spiritual kinship connection. And so I don't consider myself beastly, even though I probably have the same subcutaneous fat as a whale. I certainly have the same skin. And as far as I think there's an inherent danger when we start to commercialise our whales or any of the sea creatures that live in our sea country. And so if I just look at what's happening, for instance, probably 3 times already here we've heard about the Humpback Highway. And for me, it's not a highway. It's a storyline, it's a songline, and therefore it's been now positioned as a highway, which means it's been colonised. And the continuation of colonisation in that respect of ours is now entering our sea country. And when we look at the commercialisation of our whaling system and potentially our dolphins, this morning I talked about our role as women in our country related to our whales and dolphins, singing them and cooperative fishing practices with them. And now we have people who are able to go on cruise ships and dock in Eden and buy off the cruise ships some food and start to feed the whales and the dolphins, to the fact that when we're singing whales and singing dolphins now, they're like, oh, hang on, there's a cruise ship coming, I've got a free feed over here. So there's a danger in that at what point in time do they become so commercialised that becomes a natural practice, that they're just hanging in the bay waiting for a cruise ship to come in. And when, COVID hit and the cruise ships didn't come in, that relied on them to actually have to go back and practice their own fishing practices as well.
You made that point about the Humpback Highway and the colonialisation of the language, and you made the point this morning as well about the southern right whale, or the southern whale. Are there many examples like that? Forgive my ignorance.
For me, there is. I hear them every day, and it's not through intent. Sometimes it's just a play on words that people use to, Humpback Highway, it rhymes, right? It's if I was an English teacher, I'd be able to tell you that word we all learnt in English when a HH meets together. But for me, it's that it is that colonisation of our culture, and there are lots of opportunities to really sink in and embed Aboriginal cultural practices and Aboriginal cultural language, not necessarily our native language, but our language that we use and have used, from generation to generation. And when we use that language, and when we keep that, and when we are asking Aboriginal people to be at the forefront of Indigenous knowledges and cultural ecological knowledges, we're then working together in partnership. We're not alienating them to the side.
Thank you. Can I take a slightly different tack? I want to ask Olaf, talking about culture and we're talking about Indigenous culture, what do we know about the culture of Wales from your perspectives?
So I think when we just spoke about the importance of language when we talk about culture, actually, and language defines culture very much. So, and we do this on a daily basis. We introduce new words, and sometimes we call something very evil in a very good way, and it becomes something suddenly not so evil anymore. So I don't know if whales do that, but whales certainly have a language, and there's been some recent studies that clearly show that there is the ability of whales to develop a culture. And of course, I'm using the word whales here. We have to distinguish between species, but for example, the humpback whales have developed a cultural system. For me as a researcher, when I go out there and I do see the whales and I know that they're coming at certain times in certain age classes every year, and they actually are coming together, while they sometimes, travel with different individuals, but they do see each other, and I am very certain that they do know each other as individuals, and they will probably recognize each other by vocalization as individuals. And so there's no question that they will have a network developed, just like we know from dolphins, but there it's a lot more related to their genetic relationship, whereas with the humpback whales, for instance, it will be more based on a friendship or, like a development over time. So I think we can speak of culture, but it will be a very different culture to our understanding. But let's start with language, and that's probably the perfect example. I mean, it's a complex language that these whales have developed, and that language will deliver a form of culture. And yeah, maybe one day we'll understand that culture. Wouldn't that be amazing?
I'm going to try and squeeze in the same sort of question, but with different wording to each of you, and then I'm going to come to the audience, because I'd really like to leave enough time for questions here. Vanessa, I guess most importantly, from your perspective, how do we conserve these giants? How do we conserve these beauties and beasts in a very quickly changing world?
Great question. I guess the thing is that we need to remember that a lot of people have the ability to interact with whales, be it flying a drone off land, or the fact that people are on boats, there's whale watching, people are making money off whales, people are seeing whales. We need to be educating the people who are out there in the field who aren't necessarily scientists. You don't need to be a scientist to enjoy a whale, but those people who are having interactions with them, helping them be informed at the forefront, right? So that's a first step. But also then the reason why I'm so passionate about education is because the more that we know about our blue backyard, the better informed we are to make good decisions. And that's why it does really start at those formative years, such as whether it be on Play School talking about to kids, don't release balloons up into the air because what comes up does go down. And then that has the same effect because the people watching that as well are also taking that information in. So it's this, there was a famous paper as well from my lab, are we loving whales to death? And the idea of that we want to have more of an interaction with them, but are we getting too close? Are we kind of harassing them? We want to learn more about them. For some people, they might need to see a whale. I don't know what it is, but it comes down to education and awareness. The more we know, the better we can protect, right? But for general, a lot of us, more than 50% of Australia lives within 50 kilometres of the ocean. So that means there's a potential for us to have a lot of flow-on effects for our behaviour here on land near the ocean. So I just wanted to put that into perspective, that what we can do in the immediate and the changing environment is very much working together society-wise to then take simple actions like cleaning the beach up, keeping that clean. If you're going out on the water, knowing that there's distances to keep from a whale on a boat, that kind of thing.
So we can give your answer a bit of space here, but how do we centre First Nations traditional knowledge systems within contemporary scientific approaches or alongside contemporary scientific approaches when it comes to conserving, protecting whales?
I think, Olaf does it very well, I must say. Olaf does it very well. It's about understanding, taking time to have a deep dive into the knowledges, the stories, and understand while the story seems simplistic, it has a bigger influence behind it, and therefore the to taking time to understand that, working with your local community to understand them knowledges. Remember, our knowledges have been developed through observation for over, 60,000 years, and they've been handed down inside of our stories, inside of our songs, inside of our geographical locations. They're connected to land, sea and sky, so they have a holistic approach. But that doesn't mean it's the only approach. And so really, it's the collaboration. When you're willing to work in collaboration with Aboriginal people and let Aboriginal people lead the cultural ecological knowledges part of the journey, and that is when the partnership comes together. And so it's no different to, when whales move into country, we all heard here today the whales are on their way, but the dolphins are preparing country now for the whales. And so when whales move into country, dolphins' role is to welcome them to country. And so they will come out, they will meet them, and they will swim with them, connecting them to country. Whales will share the stories of their journey through song. These are all the cultural ecological practices, and we know what's happening now is starting to happen because the white flowers have started to leave the tea tree. The coastal wattle is going back to green, which means whales are on their way, mullets are moving up the estuaries, and us as people are starting to prepare. Even though not today, it feels quite warm, but we're starting to prepare because we know the colder months are coming. And so at the moment, we're in that warm dry before we hit the cool dry, then we'll hit the wet season. And so it's understanding and working together with those cultural knowledges as a group.
Thank you, Jodi.
I don't know if I've got time to add something very quickly. No.
I was going to say, from your perspective, Olaf, how do we integrate different knowledge systems, ways of thinking and sciences to try and conserve whales better?
Well, so the good news, we are seeing a transition, at least in science, where there's more collaboration to include the Indigenous knowledge. And it's actually, in the last couple of years, it's being more and more promoted, which is good, and we can see it, it's happening. But of course, there is resistance, there's strong resistance out there, and we are always in the danger that we're going back into the dark times. And I really feel that yes, it's great. We have this acknowledgement, and we start seeing that this existing knowledge, we're trying to incorporate it. How we're going to do it, we still don't know actually exactly sure how to do it, but it's obviously through talking and through taking time to understand, and it's a process. So I think it's very important that we always remember ourselves that it starts with us. It's something that everyone has to sort of, go for, fight for, because it's diversity that will keep us going in the future. It's not just, being single-minded in black and white. And for the protection of the whales, diversity in our culture is the best way for their protection, because it means that when we are under pressure through economic or other challenges such as climate change, then at least we have the ability to act. There's different groups because we allow diversity to act and allow different approaches to deal with changes. If we all just sit on the same car, it might be very tempting, but we're going to be doomed for the future if we don't allow diversity. So I think that's one of the key elements for the protection of the whales. We've seen what happened in the past when there was an industry that really was only looking at one thing, and that was trying to harvest the beast and getting the most amount of money out of it. And there was opposition to this was hardly allowed. It was suppressed because economy was more important. So, yeah, I mean, we know what happened in the past. So that's the way that we don't want to see ever again.
We have got 5-6 minutes for questions, and there is a microphone out there. Who's got questions for Vanessa, Jodi, and Olaf? Oh, there's one right here.
Yes. The whales are so amazing creatures. They're so fascinating and mysterious to me, and I'm still learning. But what amazes me is that they have the ability to navigate themselves, and they have the connection to a magnetic field, and they have something in their brain like magnet, or I don't know yet. I would love to ask Vanessa. And it's interesting where the research in terms of the because we see the change in the magnetic field. We see that the North Pole shifting, and it's moving more rapidly, and we see those trending events of the whales that recently been in Tasmania. So does this research, is there any research in terms of how it affects the whales, the change of the geophysical parameters of the planet and the magnetic field? Yeah.
That's a very big question, but I think probably the best way to tackle that is that there are two general types of whales, one being the toothed whale, the echolocating animals that use biological sonar, high frequency sounds, and then you've got the humpback whales, which are the low frequency communicators, which the sound travels long distances. And the way that they would navigate or do things in the world is a little bit different to each other, because one's using higher frequency, shorter distances, and one's using the lower frequency. And the way in which they're navigating is also similar, but would probably be different. With humpback whale navigation, there's some fantastic papers out there showing that in some cases, going from Southern Ocean, they're able to go almost, and I quote, as straight as an arrow, going from south to north in one line, only deviating a degree left and right, which is incredible. How do they do it? I don't exactly know how they do it. I don't think any of us know exactly how, unless there's something that... And I'd love your perspective on this as well, Jodi, because how do you believe whales are navigating as well?
Oh, so if for us, it's in our stories, and our stories talk to us about that the ocean was, further out to sea where the paleo coastline is, and so that was all land country. Whales were once land dwellers, and they're following the footprints of the ancients or the old people along those songlines and storylines, and so that's how our belief, one of our belief systems, is that they're following those old footprints of our old people, and our stories corroborate that. The stars in the sky, there's star stories that link up with those footprints on the ground, and there's geological formations that exist on land country that all connect to show us that pathway.
Just a quick add-on. So I think for the baleen whales, like Vanessa mentioned, we don't have to worry too much about the impact of changes in the geomagnetic field, because that's only one tool for the navigation. So they certainly use seamounts, they use features in the ocean, and they're being taught when they're born and growing up by their mothers to use those features. And of course, those are fixed landmarks that they visit. And then they also have their communication. So we know from some of the tagged whales that have been diving down to 1,000 meters, which humpback whales normally never do. And the only reason we think for that is to actually listen to calls and pick up communication. So we know that they draw each other in when there is food availability, so then they will also share information about navigation as well. But again, that's a bit complex for us still to understand how exactly that works.
And we've seen some difference in the timing of the migration. I know that, we've already seen a whale down south, a humpback whale. Maybe it's just an early whale. Obviously, we know that, they don't all stick to a strict timetable. But I guess my question lies around how you all think or suspect that the climate change and things like that might be changing that migration timing, and how that's sort of looking for the future.
Jodi, do you want to make a start on that one?
Yeah, I'll be quick. So for me, it's in seasonal change, and the indicators are happening earlier, and those indicate everything is happening earlier or later, depending on what the key indicator is. The other thing is around climate change is understanding that our cultural ecological knowledges have had to mitigate that for hundreds and thousands of years. So using those cultural indicators to assist with understanding climate change and stop tweaking the Greenwich Mean Clock. We stop doing that each year, we're starting to catch up.
Vanessa?
There's always been variation around when whales turn up. We're much better at documenting it now because we're more connected than ever. So I'd say that there's probably always been variation. Are some whales even going down to Antarctica? Probably not. There's always theories out there as well. There's great observations to support that recently as well. I would say there's more people are wanting to see whales as soon as they can. So greater effort across those times that we never usually used to look. So there's probably a variety of things, but also climate may be, well, I know definitely in my research and some of Olaf's is definitely showing us whales doing different things in response to changes in the ocean as well. So we're using that animal the size of a school bus to help us learn more about these changes that are going on more frequently as well.
And Olaf, you get the last word.
I just recall something that you told me, I think it was last year or so, and it really relates nicely to climate change, which can be El Nino and La Nina as large-scale effects of shifting climate that we have reoccurring naturally anyway. And the whales are responding to this in a way that was described in the culture as well of coastal people and communities over thousands of years. And I think that's something which shows that the whales are always have always been responding to changes, because there is times when feeding success is much higher in the Antarctic feeding ground, and that means that they will actually be able to calve more, but then they will also change their migration time. They'll probably stay longer if they have more feeding success, and they will stay shorter if the feeding success is likely to be shorter. So, but what we see on a larger scale, just from our research with other groups that we work with, is that there is a general shift of timing, but it depends on where they're feeding in Antarctica, because there's very different conditions happening in Antarctica. But generally speaking, of course, sea ice melt happens faster, and that is important for their food supply. So the time that they're spending in Antarctica is generally getting shorter, and they're shifting it to be there earlier and leave earlier simply because the sea ice has already melted.
Would you join me in thanking our amazing panelists, Dr. Vanessa Pirotta, Dr. Jodi Edwards, and Dr. Olaf Meynecke?
Knowledge creates ripples. If you like this episode of Ocean Ideas, share it and help bring the ocean into everyday conversations. Change starts here.